To unpack the audio description that accompanied the play today, I'll introduce Jack Miggins and Beth Finke.
I'm going to kick it over to Beth because while I did, to become an audio describer, while I did like a training program, the vast majority of what I know and how I know how to do this discipline has come through listening to patrons. It's coming from doing it and probably doing a real ugly job. Sorry, anybody who came out to see Sex with Strangers in 2011 or whenever that was. And then listening to feedback. Everybody has, this service is for people of varying abilities of vision, people who have been blind from birth, people who are partially sighted, who maybe in just the past year or so have gone down. So people all have different wants and needs out of this. So a big challenge is listening and trying to synthesize that into one thing, because unfortunately, and try as I might my whole life, I've only been able to say one word at a time. I'm gonna kick it over to Beth though. Beth, as a user of this service, impressions, and if you wanna talk about before the show happens, both like at home materials you might be supplied with and your experience in the theater before the show. And then during the show, what are some things that you're looking for out of audio description and your experience during the performance?
All right. Hello. Thanks, Jack. I lost my sight when I was 26 years old, and being 26, I thought, I don't need any of these special services for blind people. And so it took a while for me to start going to theater. I started with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf at Steppenwolf. I think it was a dozen years ago. Everybody in town was talking about it. It was going to Broadway. It cost $75 for a ticket, but the special pre-show for people who were blind was $20. So business is business. And so I bought my ticket. And I brought a friend who could see with me. And for you marketing people out there, I bring a friend who can see with me to every single pre-show I go to. And every single friend that goes with me, it's always a different friend, they say, oh my God, this theater is so great. They put on these pre-shows. So it does help. I mean, it really does help with marketing. When the friend comes with me, we go together, usually, I take a bus or take a cab, end up at the theater, and there is somebody standing out in front saying, are you here for the pre-show? Yes. And so they are smiling. I can hear it in their voice, and they think it's great that I'm there, and that is not always the case, and that has little to do with my blindness. But it has a lot to do with obnoxiousness. But anyway, they're happy to see me. They come on in. This is where it's going on. We get in our seats for the pre-show. My favorite things about the pre-show, I have two favorite things about the pre-show. One, the actors and actresses come out on stage and they talk to us. So they talk to us, and depending on who's interviewing them, they'll tell us what their costume is. They'll tell us how tall they are, what kind of attitude if they talk this way, but in the play they talk like this, they give us their voice so that when the play starts, we can know, we have a little advantage of who's who. The other advantage we have is that we meet actors and actresses and all the riffraff that can see. I've started using all those with sight privilege. Do not get to meet the actors ahead of time, and so I can go back to the bar afterwards and tell my friends I got to see it. And Tracy Letts was there talking to us, blah, not to name drop, but he was George in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. My second favorite thing, well, they're equal, is the audio describer, which would be Jack in this case, is the person that gets on the stage in front of us all and says, okay, I'm going to describe the stage to you. And he'll start on this side of the stage and say, right over here there's a door, and a lot of the actors and actresses come out of that door, and he'll open the door and close the door, and then walk over there, and then say, over here there's a bar, and you'll hear people putting their glasses down, and that's where the bar is, and there's a lot of action that goes over there. And by him walking across, we know how wide the stage is. Somebody's not saying the stage is 30 feet wide and 12 feet deep, And Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Because Jack had studied, I don't know, it wasn't Jack, but let's just say Jack. I don't think you did.
It was right before I started.
Okay. The audio describer has studied the play. They've seen the play. They've really gone over the script, so they know all the spoilers. So they know not to give you the spoilers, not to say, and that's the part where he takes out the gun, and because we don't want to know that before the play. So in that play, there's an impressionist painting on the wall, and when the audio describer was walking around, he'd say, well, there's a lot of books here, and there's this here, and there's this painting on the wall, and it's kind of It's a little bit just, you can't really tell what it is, but it's all kind of crazy. And so then he said, and there's a can of pop here. So he said all that other stuff so we wouldn't know that that painting mattered, except there's a scene where George is with, I can't remember the young professor's name, and the young professor says, what is that painting? And he said, oh, I'm not sure what it is. I think it's a representation of Martha's brain. And we knew that it was this impressionistic painting, so we got the joke. So that I like the audio describer doing that, and I think those are my favorite things, except for then we go to audio description.
Great. So my goal, what I would love if everybody could walk away with, is that this is not a difficult thing to do. As much as I would love to congratulate myself on my genius and outstanding ability, it's not. It's the greatest challenge of providing audio description is simplification, is not making it complicated, is making it as close to the marrow of what's going on as possible. I came to this, I act, I write, and I was working front of house at Steppenwolf, which is kind of a perfect combination for doing this because it requires, confident delivery, it requires working at home and writing out what you're going to say, and it requires the ability to interface with people who are going to be using the service. So yeah, have no fear. The basic principles of audio description are just to get people on the vision loss spectrum as close to the sighted experience as possible. What that means is significant, set changes, lighting, moments of violence, moments of physical humor, weird riots. You're supplying that where if you just closed your eyes, you wouldn't know what's going on. What that doesn't mean, though, is that I'm not interpreting the show. I am not providing analysis, and I'm trying as hard as I possibly can to just be showing what I see. There are times when there'll be something that happens on stage when I'm writing it, and I'm like, man, how do I say, how do I get this effect across? And then I have to stop to myself and say, well, what are you looking at, Jack? And it's, oh, that's all I have to do. If you can see something and you can as simply describe it as possible, then that's going to be successful most of the time, rather than providing your own analysis of it. An example, I always call it not editorializing. I'm not a character in this show. So in terms of writing the description, an example of that would be like to say, oh, she resigns herself to her fate. Would be a lousy piece of audio description, because what the heck does that mean? She resigns herself to her fate. But if I say, she tries the pickle jar one more time and the top doesn't budge, she puts it back in the drawer, covers her eyes, turns away and sighs. Maybe that's resigning herself to her fate of not having those pickles. So all you're doing is seeing what's happening and breaking it down as short as possible. Now, some of the golden rules around that, obviously not speaking over dialogue, and largely not getting in the way of the show. Moments of silence presumably have been directed to be moments of silence. And so if there's a 10-second pause, maybe for the first 3-4 seconds, I might try to say what's happening. But the director has intentionally had this moment of stillness, of quiet, or of tension. And if instead I'm saying, oh, he wipes his brow and blah, 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 then the people who are listening to audio description aren't getting that. So my goal is always to have as light a touch as possible, not editorializing, really key, because you're just trying to provide people with the ability to make their own interpretation and have their own understanding of the show, rather than getting my understanding of the show, because you don't know what my tastes are. You're trying to say as much as possible in as little time. This is counting syllables. This is doing test runs. This is cutting stuff away that you might think is really important. I use the word triage all the time, and it really feels like that, because we could right now look around this room, and I could describe the facets of this room, which, no offense, the renovations are great, but it's not that exciting. I could describe this until the sun goes down. Every little detail, this little patch on the ground, this dog that looks so peaceful in front of me, the difference between that orange chair and that swivel chair, the phrase on it. You could do that forever, but then to what effect? So the biggest goal is what are the things that really need to come across so that people are on as equal a playing field as possible. You'll see when we go through a scene, like this is a wide open space. The first lines make note of desk, make notes of cardboard boxes in the corner, because that's all the time that you have. And so a lot of times you have to let stuff go, but the challenge is finding out what are the things that really need to stay. Another huge, and just like letting the performance speak for itself. That is the simplicity. Is I want to provide, I want to allow the play to just be experienced without me garbling in somebody's ear as much as possible. And that is, like Beth was saying, about walking the space. Incidental movements, a wipe of the nose, something like that. Am I really helping somebody enjoy this play more by talking about that? Or am I just adding another voice in their ear? And my goal is to enhance and not to always just be that voice in the ear.
Can I give an example from the play?
From this play?
Yeah, because Jack and I were at some of the rehearsals, and so we kind of listened, and then afterwards, there was a part where she said, close your eyes. And then she says, good. And in the first round, he would say, the actress said, close your eyes. He'd say, she closes her eyes. Good. And I'd say, Jack, if she says good, I understand that she closed her eyes,
Yeah.
But but I appreciate, it's tricky business.
And
it's really hard.
Just before this performance, I actually made an edit onto my script, which is the part where Belinda starts to cry. And I realized, and this came from your feedback, Beth, that immediately after she starts crying, the other character says, "Oh, you're crying?" And and I had in there, she begins to cry and turns away. And then I realized, oh wait, we're getting that information from the characters. So I think it's just, she turns away covering her face or something like that. So using the material, if the play can speak for itself, if somebody says, I am now pouring whiskey into this coffee mug, I don't need to say pours whiskey into a coffee mug. But the big thing with all these golden rules of audio description is you're gonna break them all the time. And that's okay. There are moments of chaos where you have to speak over lines. There's moments where something really important happens and you're gonna have to talk over somebody. There are times, pronouns can be really tricky when you have multiple characters on stage, because in this play, for example, if I say, she does this, well, there are two women on stage talking, and that can be, to someone who's looking at it, it might not be confusing. But if you don't know, then, oh, look at that. So trying to use characters' names as much as possible, but sometimes, if you're doing a play with George Stephanopoulos, I'm not gonna be able to say George Stephanopoulos every time. So I'm gonna have to say he a couple times. So you're gonna break all these rules, and that's totally okay. You just have to be smart about when to do it. The process of doing this, I normally see a show 2+ times. When I first started, I saw them way more. 2 times before I start writing it. The first time I want to experience the show as just a viewer. I'm not taking notes, I'm just getting my impressions of the show. The second time, I'm taking detailed notes, and you just see these notebooks. I'm taking notes in a dark theater, so it looks pretty crazy, but trying to take as many detailed notes as possible. Also trying to have a view at the back of the theater and have a view at the front of the theater. So when I'm in front, I can get faces, I can get small stuff. When I'm in the back, I can get big picture stuff and try to synthesize that. And this is easier to provide even for smaller places now, not an absolute necessity, but it really helps to have an archival copy of the show. Wide shot, it doesn't need to be close-ups, doesn't need to move, just one big wide shot, because I'm sitting at home and I'm going with a fine-tooth comb, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, writing down as much as what's possible. So the goal is to have as much as possible scripted, but also it's live theater. So maybe that gun misfires, maybe somebody trips, maybe a service dog runs on stage and chases a basketball, which I've heard a story happened one time. And you just have to be adaptable like that. But particularly in terms of timing and pauses, writing out as much as possible. And it's arduous. Some days I can really fly, but I find normally it's if I can do 10 pages in an hour of a script, I feel like I'm doing a comprehensive job. So it does take a fair amount of time at home. And then going back into the theater, doing a dry run optimally with somebody who uses the service, but most of the time that's not possible. So just doing it on your own to make sure the timing. And then performance day, if you're lucky enough to be able to do one of those pre-show experiences, touch tours, that's fantastic. But the audio description should optimally speak for itself. You should be able to walk into the theater just like anybody else and get the same experience. That means pre-show, I'm over mic doing program notes, doing set description again, perhaps going through characters and costumes so that you can sit in your seat with 10 minutes to the show and get that information still. And then obviously describing during the show. The kit that we use, Beth, I'm gonna slide around you a little bit. It's obscured by these chairs, but there's a little FM transmitter here with a little antenna that's sticking up. And I am speaking into it in this stenographer's mask, which makes me look like Bane from Batman. And so this is gonna be me speaking at my full volume right now.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. So it's pretty good. But what that means is I do still warn everybody who's around me when I'm in a house to make sure everybody knows what's going on. A lot of times if they know it's for an access service, then people will be a lot cooler with it and they won't just come up and yell at me, which has happened a couple times. Because people don't know and it's weird. And there's a guy with this funky little mask in his face. So I can't blame them for thinking it's strange. But yeah, letting everybody know that that's coming. Boop, doop, and I know we're kind of in it on time. We're gonna do a slice from the play. I'm not gonna do like, oh, this is a good way, this is a bad way, just to give you a show of how this goes down. We're gonna do a slice from the end. Some of the things that you'll notice in here, there are moments where I can squeeze in description over no lines. There are moments where I'm talking at the same time as them because it's chaos. There are moments when there are things happening that aren't being described. The finger snaps is something, and Beth told me about that too, where I describe the very first time she snaps her fingers, and then you're hearing snaps. You know it's who the snapper is, so that's a place where I can lay low. That's a place where I can relax and just let somebody experience the show.
If I may add something here. And then when we were at Tech, the first time I was here watching it, I didn't know that she was maybe dead at the end because I thought she was unconscious because she kept going, wake up. And we talked together and I said, you have to tell me that they're doing the pulse. I didn't know that the first round. So when she was checking her pulse, but I couldn't see that, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is going to be, this is going to have a bit of a heavy touch in a moment. This is going to have a lighter touch in a moment. And just a little slice in. I'm going to be doing it over actual mics.
She loves herself.
What's that?
She loves herself.
Belinda
Good. Now
turns, faces Adeline,
can you reach
eyes
for
still
her?
closed. She
Even
grasps
harder.
forward.
You're so close, but so far. Come on.
She slides forward, straining,
Good.
grasping.
Keep reaching. Now I'm going to count from 5, and when I hit 1, this new you is going to be sitting in the chair you're sitting in, and you are going to be the person living inside of you that you always wanted to be. Is that okay with you? Good. Now keep reaching. Reach for her, Belinda.
Yeah,
She rises to her
Reach
feet,
for
grasping
her.
forward.
I'm trying.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Belinda collapses into the chair, slumped over the desk.
What?
Adeline grabs Belinda's wrist, checks her pulse.
Come on, Belinda. Snap out of it.
She pushes her up into the chair. Adeline pulls back, slaps Belinda. She spins in the chair, limp, unconscious.